He laughed right in her face, like it was the most ridiculous thing he'd ever heard. A black woman in special forces? Yeah, right. The words cut deep. 12-year-old Lena Carter stood frozen, her eyes welling up, until the automatic doors slid open and her mother stepped in, wearing her uniform like armor. Lena hadn't been trying to prove anything. She was just a kid, wandering the shoe aisle of Dick's Sporting Goods at South Park Mall in Charlotte, chatting with her best friend about homework, sneakers, and how badly she wanted a fresh pair of Nikes. Her tone was light, relaxed, until, as kids sometimes do, she said something unexpected. "Mom's not picking me up until she finishes at Fort Bragg," she said, snapping a shoebox shut. "She's in special forces. Her schedule gets pretty wild sometimes." Her best friend blinked in disbelief. "Wait, your mom's in the army? Like, she actually goes on missions?" "Yeah," Lena said casually, as if she were talking about her favorite cereal. "She's Sergeant Major Monica Carter. Just got back from overseas." It should have been a normal moment, one of those small, proud things kids say. But then laughter sliced through the store. Not warm laughter. Not kind. It was harsh, dismissive, the kind designed to shrink you. A few feet away, rummaging through a rack of Under Armour hoodies, stood Officer Derek Lawson. Off-duty, in jeans and a Carolina Panthers shirt, badge clipped casually to his belt like it was a fashion choice. He looked like any other weekend shopper. But the laugh? That was his. Loud enough to pull heads from nearby aisles. Special forces? Lawson scoffed, shaking his head with a smug grin. "Come on, kid. I've been in law enforcement for 2 decades. There's no way your mom's running missions with the Green Berets." Then he paused, his gaze sharpening. "Especially not someone like her." The insult landed heavy. The words were bad, but the tone was worse. Lena felt her face flush. Her lips pressed into a tight line. All around her, shoppers paused. A mom with a toddler in her cart pretended to look at socks, but was clearly listening. 2 teens snickered near the registers. Lena's friend leaned in and whispered, "Just ignore him. He doesn't get it." But ignoring wasn't an option. Lawson kept going. "Look, I get it," he said, chuckling like this was all adorable. "Kids make up stuff. My boy used to say his dad was Spider-Man. Same energy. Cute story, but not real." Embarrassment crawled up Lena's neck. She wanted to speak. She wanted to defend her mom. But her voice caught somewhere between her heart and her throat. Her fingers trembled as she shoved the shoebox back onto the shelf, the cardboard scraping loudly against plastic. "Why would you say that in front of everyone?" her friend asked, her voice trembling. "Because it's true," Lena said quietly, but with conviction. That was enough to draw more laughter from Lawson. He tilted his head toward the small crowd, now half watching, half pretending not to. "See? That's what I'm talking about. Imagination in overdrive. Look, sweetheart, it's nice to want your mom to be a superhero, but you don't have to go full fairy tale." Fairy tale. It stung worse than the laugh. Because Lena's mom wasn't a fantasy. She was real, strong, disciplined, brave. She was the woman who tucked Lena in one night and deployed the next. The woman who carried both gear and grace. But under the fluorescent lighting of a sporting goods store, none of that was visible. And Officer Lawson knew it. His smug grin said he felt victorious. "Tell you what," he added, tapping his badge like a punchline. "If your mom really is special forces, maybe she should stop by the station. We could all use a good laugh." Lena's chest felt tight. She thought of her mother's scarred hands, the medals in the living room, the way she walked through airports and strangers moved out of the way. Her mom was a hero, and here this man was, dismissing it all, tearing it down for sport. "You don't know anything about her," Lena finally said, her voice cracking as the words forced their way out. The sentence silenced the air. For just a moment, Lawson's smile flickered, but it returned quickly as he clapped his hands together like the matter was settled. "Sure, kid. Whatever you say." Around them, the silence got louder. A few shoppers shared awkward glances. Some looked amused, others uncomfortable. No one said a word in support. No one confirmed what Lena knew was true. Her friend shifted beside her. "Lena, Maybe let's wait outside. But Lena couldn't move. Her feet felt bolted to the linoleum floor. This wasn't just embarrassment. It was deeper. It was about her mom, her pride, her story, being mocked in real time with an audience. Still, she dropped her eyes, staring down at the floor tiles because what could she really do? She was just a kid. What Lena didn't know was that just as she whispered a silent wish for her mom to appear, Sergeant Major Monica Carter was already striding through the mall entrance, full uniform catching the morning light. Inside the store, everything felt closer now, tighter. The aisles buzzed with quiet tension. Lena shifted her weight, arms wrapped around herself, but the sting of the moment didn't fade. Officer Lawson leaned on a display stand like he was the star of a one-man show. "You know," he began again, with a smirk that barely passed for a smile. "People have no idea what kind of grit it takes to make it into special forces. Years of training, combat deployments, grueling selection. You don't just stumble into special forces," he scoffed. "That's not exactly something you hear moms chatting about at the PDA." Lawson chuckled again, shaking his head in disbelief. "And you want me to believe your mom is one of them?" The words wrapped around Lena's chest like a tightening rope. She wanted to explain, wanted to tell him about the months her mom had spent overseas, the handwritten letters in pencil, because calling wasn't always safe. But she couldn't. Not while he stared her down like a challenge. Not with strangers lingering nearby like they were watching a scene unfold on TV. Her friend Eli Moreno darted a look toward the onlookers. "Let's just go," she whispered again, voice tight with worry. But Lena shook her head. Her throat burned, but she made the words come anyway. "I don't care if you believe me," she said. "My mom doesn't need your approval." That should have been enough to end it. But Officer Lawson didn't seem like the kind of man who let a kid have the last word. He took a small step forward, dropping his voice just enough to sound personal, but still loud enough for the crowd to catch every syllable. "Sweetheart," he said with mock concern, "I get wanting to feel proud. But making up stories? That's not the way. People are gonna laugh. And let's be real, a little girl like you doesn't understand real sacrifice." Lena's ears flamed. She blinked fast, refusing to let the tears fall. The shelves in front of her blurred, but she didn't move. Eli reached out and touched her sleeve, but Lena stepped away, her fists clenched tight. From another aisle, a man in a baseball cap muttered just loud enough to register, "Let the kid speak, man." But it wasn't enough to shift the moment. Lawson pretended not to hear. Lena swallowed and forced herself to speak again, her voice shaking but firm. "You're wrong about her," she said. "You're wrong about everything." Lawson laughed again, but this time, it was heavier, like the laugh of someone who believed they'd already won. He glanced around, almost inviting the crowd to join in the joke. "Wrong?" he said with a grin. "Kid, I've stood beside real heroes. I've met soldiers, the kind who do the real work, who go overseas and face danger every day. And trust me, they don't look like your mom." That last sentence was a gut punch. It wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. And everyone in that store understood exactly what he meant. Lena stood frozen, her face burning with equal parts rage and humiliation. Eli gasped beside her. "That's not fair," she blurted out. "You don't even know her." Lawson turned his gaze on her now, his smirk widening. "And you do?" he shot back. "What? Did you two swap war stories over lunch? Please. I've been wearing a uniform since before you were born. I know what's real. And what's made up." Eli shrank back a little, but Lena didn't budge. Her hands trembled, but her eyes didn't leave his face. "You'll see," she said. "She's coming." Lawson leaned back against the hoodie display, clearly enjoying himself. "Sure she is," he drawled. "What's next? She's gonna parachute through the skylight?" He laughed again, shaking his head like this was the best entertainment he'd had all week. "Don't worry, kid. You'll figure it out eventually. The world's not make-believe." Around them, people started whispering. A few shook their heads. One woman pretended to browse through yoga pants, but her phone was angled toward the scene, recording. A teenage boy near the checkout elbowed his friend, both watching intently. The weight of it all settled on Lena's shoulders like a bag full of bricks. For a second, she regretted speaking up at all. Maybe she should have kept quiet. Her mom had always told her that some things were better left unsaid in public. Maybe this was one of them. But then she pictured Lawson's smirk, the way everyone seemed ready to believe him over her. That thought burned hotter than her embarrassment. She wiped her face with the back of her hand and stood straighter. "You'll see," she said again, firmer, louder. Lawson folded his arms and leaned back like a man who'd just closed a case. "We'll see, huh?" he said, lips curling. "All right, I'll wait." The silence that followed was louder than the store's playlist buzzing overhead. Time stretched. The crowd seemed to hold its breath. Some people watched to see if Lena would break, if she'd finally hang her head and walk away. She didn't. But inside, her heart pounded so hard she was sure it echoed through the store. She stayed standing in front of the sneakers, but part of her was screaming to run. She wanted to rewind time, to take back that one sentence that started it all. If she had just said, "My mom's at work," none of this would be happening. Now, she was center stage in a drama she never asked for. Officer Lawson looked completely at ease, rocking back on his heels, arms crossed, smug smile firmly in place. "You're quiet now," he said, a smug glint in his eye. "Starting to realize you stretched the truth a little?" His voice pulled her gaze up, no matter how badly she wanted to look away. Whispers circled the aisles like smoke. "Why is he picking on her like that?" someone asked. "Maybe she did make it up," came another voice, not quite low enough. Eli tugged at Lena's arm again, pleading, "Come on, let's just wait outside. You don't have to talk to him anymore." But Lena couldn't let go of the fire in her chest. She didn't know if it was rage or shame, but it burned the same. "I'm not lying," she whispered. Maybe to her friend, maybe to herself. Lawson leaned in just slightly, voice dropping to a mock whisper. "Listen," he said, "I'm trying to do you a favor. Run around telling stories like that. People are going to laugh. Not everyone's going to be this nice about it. You'd be better off sticking to what's real." What he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that Sergeant Major Monica Carter was already inside the mall, her boots hitting the tile floor with every step, just seconds away from making this story very, very real. "She takes care of you, right? Works hard, provides what you need?" Lawson said, his tone edging into mock sincerity. "That should be enough. No need to pretend she's some kind of war hero." Pretend. The word hit Lena like a slap, echoing inside her skull. Pretend, as if the nights she cried into her pillow were imagined. As if the medals in the display case at home were trinkets picked up from a souvenir shop. As if every moment her mom spent thousands of miles away didn't cost something real. For the first time, doubt crept in, not in her mom, but in herself. Maybe she shouldn't have spoken up so boldly. Maybe it was her fault the room now saw her mom's life as a punchline. She bit the inside of her cheek until the pain grounded her. "He doesn't matter," Sofia Delgado whispered. "You know what's true." But it didn't feel like that. What good was truth if no one believed it? Lawson scanned the store like a performer, looking for new eyes to entertain. "Tell you what," he said, almost laughing. "If your mom walks in here in full uniform, I'll buy you those sneakers myself." He waved a hand toward the shoe wall. "Until then, maybe save the fairy tales for bedtime." Fairy tales. Again. Lena's vision blurred, but she refused to let the tears fall. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Not him. A woman nearby, holding a basket of clearance t-shirts, finally spoke up. "She's just a kid," she said, her voice firm and clear. Lawson turned his head slowly, locking eyes with her. "And I'm just being honest," he replied flatly. "Better she hears it now than keeps embarrassing herself." The woman frowned, but looked away. No one else spoke. Lena's stomach turned. Why wouldn't anyone step in? Why was it so easy for people to stand by and say nothing? Her mom always told her, courage isn't about shouting. Sometimes it's just about standing when you'd rather sink. But right now, standing felt like drowning. Her lips pressed into a hard line. "You'll see," she murmured, voice barely a breath but trembling with resolve. Lawson sighed. pretending he was tired of the show. Kid, I've heard it all. Aliens, superheroes, secret agents. Kids make things up to feel important. Nothing wrong with wanting to stand out. But the truth? The truth doesn't need to be defended. That one hit deep. Because wasn't that exactly what she'd been doing? Defending the truth? And if it was so clear, so undeniable, why did she feel like she was the one losing? Sophia stepped between them, her small frame tense. You're being mean, she said, her voice shaking. She's not lying. Lawson arched an eyebrow. Oh, and how would you know? Because I've seen pictures, Sophia shot back. Her mom wears a uniform. She has medals. She trailed off, suddenly aware that her words sounded flimsy against his arrogance. Lawson let out a low chuckle. Pictures? Kid, anyone can pick up a uniform at a surplus store. Doesn't make it real. Lena's jaw tightened. Every sentence he tossed out chipped away at the truth, burying it under a pile of doubt. And worse, people were leaning in now, curious, unsure. Like his version made more sense. Her legs wobbled, but she refused to sink. She straightened her back. You'll see, she said again. This time, it wasn't just defiance, it was a vow. Lawson tilted his head, smiling like he was humoring a toddler. All right then, I'm waiting. The whispers faded. Now people were just watching, waiting. The air thick with anticipation, like the last moment before a storm. Lena could barely breathe. Her thoughts raced, her palms were slick with sweat. And then, she heard it. Boots. Measured, firm. Striking the tile, in even rhythm. She didn't know it yet, but her mother's entrance wasn't just going to stop the mocking. It was going to flip the entire room upside down. The sliding doors of the mall sighed open, letting in the hum of food court chatter and footsteps. And through them walked Sergeant Major Monica Carter, confident, composed, and unmistakable. Her uniform was crisp, the patches on her sleeve gleaming beneath the store's lighting. Her beret tucked neatly under one arm, posture straight, presence commanding. She had just come from a formal ceremony at Fort Bragg and decided, on a whim, to surprise her daughter by picking her up herself. She hadn't expected to walk into this. From across the store, Lena saw her, and the wave of relief that surged through her nearly buckled her knees. Her heart leapt in her chest, and then plummeted, because now her mom was here, and she was about to witness everything. Monica's boots didn't break stride. Her eyes moved across shelves of gear, racks of jerseys, the gathered crowd, and landed on her daughter. Lena, red-faced, fists clenched. Sophia, standing protectively at her side. And across from them, a man who clearly believed he owned the space. Monica's jaw set. She didn't ask questions. She just crossed the floor with purpose, and the crowd parted like water. Lena stood frozen. Part of her wanted to bolt straight into her mother's arms. But something about the way Monica walked, the power in her stillness, made her wait. Lawson noticed her now, too. At first, the smirk stayed. He thought she was just another mom coming to pick up her kid. But as she got closer, and her insignia became impossible to miss, the smile flickered, just for a second. Then he masked it. Mom. Lena's voice cracked, louder than she intended, but full of relief and something deeper, vindication. Monica reached her daughter's side, her hand resting gently on Lena's shoulder. The pressure of that single touch melted just a sliver of tension from her spine. What's going on? Monica asked, her voice calm but edged with steel. Lawson straightened up slightly, adjusting his stance. Just a misunderstanding, he said, forcing a polite smile. Evening, ma'am. Just clearing up a little mix-up, Lawson said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Monica's gaze swept from him to the quiet circle of onlookers, then landed on her daughter. Lena's lips trembled as she finally managed to speak. He said you couldn't be who you are. That I made it up, she said, the words spilling out in a mix of shame and frustration. Monica didn't respond right away. She simply studied Lawson, her silence growing heavier by the second, long enough for him to feel it settle in his chest. Lawson chuckled awkwardly, scratching the back of his neck. You know how kids are. Big imaginations. I was just teasing a little. No harm meant. Monica's voice was calm, but there was no softness in it. You mocked my daughter in public and called her a liar. Lawson's shoulders tensed. Now hold on, I didn't say that. I just said, maybe she didn't have all the facts. Monica cut in smoothly. You decided her truth was funny. Tell me, officer, what exactly made it a joke? She used the title deliberately. The tension in Lawson's face tightened. A few people in the crowd exchanged surprised glances, realizing she knew who he was. The badge on his belt caught the light like it was suddenly too bright to ignore. He cleared his throat. With all due respect, Sergeant Major. Monica raised her hand slightly, stopping him cold. Respect doesn't begin with laughing at a child. The store fell into an eerie hush. Even the music overhead seemed to fade, like the entire place was holding its breath. Lena felt taller somehow, just from her mother being there. The shame that had wrapped around her all afternoon began to loosen. Sophia's eyes widened beside her, both stunned and proud. Lawson shifted on his feet again. The easy confidence he'd worn like a badge just minutes ago was evaporating. I didn't mean anything by it, he said. It just caught me off guard, that's all. Monica tilted her head slightly. Unusual doesn't mean untrue. It just means you've never seen it. Maybe the problem isn't me being here. It's that you never imagined I could be. Her voice stayed level, but every word landed like a brick. Lena looked up at her mother, all blooming in her chest. She hoped Lawson would try to argue. She wanted him to, but he didn't. His mouth opened, then closed again. That arrogant smirk was nowhere to be found. From the sidelines, someone whispered, "She's the real deal." Another shopper near the checkout muttered, "That's legit." For the first time that day, Lena took a breath that didn't feel like it came with a weight attached. Monica gave her shoulder a gentle squeeze before turning back to Lawson. Next time you think about laughing at a kid, remember this. Truth doesn't need your approval to be real. Lawson swallowed hard and gave a stiff nod. The swagger he'd leaned on all afternoon had dissolved completely. But Monica wasn't finished, not yet. The air inside the store was thick now. No one moved. No one even pretended to shop anymore. Every head nearby was turned toward the sneaker aisle, watching the unfolding reckoning between a uniformed soldier and a shrinking man in street clothes with a badge on his belt. Monica didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. It was all in the way she stood, in the quiet command in her presence. "Officer Lawson," she said, her voice steady. "We don't know each other. But you still decided it was acceptable to mock my daughter in public, to undermine her, to make her feel small. Why?" Lawson's tongue darted out to wet his lips. The confidence he'd worn minutes ago had vanished like mist in sunlight. "Sergeant Major, I wasn't trying to." "Answer the question," she said, her tone crisp. He shifted again, looking for a foothold. "It wasn't like that. I thought she was, stretching the truth. Kids do that." Monica's eyes didn't waver. Stretching the truth is saying your mom bakes the best cookies. It's claiming you can beat anyone in a race. But my daughter told you something real. And instead of listening, you laughed. A soft wave of murmurs passed through the onlookers. The woman who had spoken earlier crossed her arms now, clearly locked in. Lawson forced a chuckle, but it rang hollow. "Okay, maybe I shouldn't have laughed. I can admit that. But you have to understand, Special Forces? It just caught me off guard." Monica cut him off. "What about Special Forces surprised you? That she knew the term? Or that she used it to describe me?" He hesitated. That pause was all anyone needed to hear. Monica leaned in slightly, just enough to force him to listen closely. Her voice dropped, calm, but pointed. "You saw a black woman. You saw a mother. And your brain couldn't make those things line up with Special Forces. So instead of asking questions, you ridiculed my daughter to protect your assumptions." Lawson swallowed. His eyes flicked across the faces around him, realizing he wasn't just answering Monica anymore. He was on the record in front of an audience. Sophia leaned toward Lena and whispered, "He looks nervous." Lena whispered back, "Good." Lawson drew in a breath, struggling to recover. "I never said anything about race. Or women. You're putting words in my mouth. Monica straightened, her tone unbothered. You didn't have to say it. Your laugh said enough. A few heads in the crowd nodded. Someone near the checkout muttered, "She's right." Lawson's jaw flexed, but the fight had drained from his posture. "Fine," he said quietly. "Maybe I came off wrong. I didn't mean to do harm." Monica looked at her daughter, then back at him. Intent doesn't erase the impact. You stood here while a grown man with a badge made a child's truth into a joke. Do you have any idea what that does to a kid's sense of worth? Lena felt something swell in her chest. It wasn't hurt this time. It was strength. Because her mom was saying the words she hadn't been able to. And this time, when the silence fell, it wasn't heavy. It was powerful. The officer shifted awkwardly, clearly aware now of every phone discreetly aimed his way. Monica let the silence stretch, letting the weight of the moment settle. "I've served this country for 22 years, she said, her voice quiet but unyielding. "Led troops through terrain you'll likely never set foot on. Made choices with life and death in the balance. I wear this uniform because I earned it, every stripe, every symbol. And yet, the hardest fight I face isn't overseas. It's here, convincing people like you that I'm not a punchline." Her words landed with the force of steel wrapped in silk. Lawson flinched slightly. He opened his mouth, then thought better of it. Nothing came out. Monica turned then, not just to him, but to the entire store. "This isn't just about me. It's about what happens when people let their assumptions speak louder than someone else's truth. My daughter should never have to defend my career to strangers. She should never be standing here in tears because a grown man couldn't stretch his imagination far enough to believe her." A single, hesitant clap broke the stillness. The woman with the clearance basket, clearly moved, began to applaud, then stopped, embarrassed. But the gesture lingered. Lawson rubbed the back of his neck, his earlier swagger long gone. "All right. Point taken." Monica turned to him, lowering her voice so only he and Lena could hear. "Next time, remember this. Respect costs you nothing. But the lack of it, that cost falls on everyone else." Lena looked up at her mother, the pride in her chest finally overtaking the shame. For the first time since the ordeal began, she felt grounded, seen. But while Lawson looked ready to slink away, the store wasn't ready to let him off the hook. The crowd had grown. People from nearby aisles had drifted over, drawn by the quiet intensity unfolding near the sneakers. Monica stayed put. One hand rested calmly on Lena's shoulder, her stance solid. Lawson, in contrast, seemed smaller now, arms crossed as if trying to hide in plain sight. "You think this is over," Monica said gently. "But it's not. Not until you actually understand what you did." Lawson gave a brittle laugh, trying to deflect. "Look, Sergeant Major, I admitted I was wrong. What more do you want? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry if I embarrassed your kid. That enough for you?" The apology hit the ground with a thud. It had no heart, just words tossed out to end a scene. Disapproval buzzed through the crowd. Monica's gaze didn't flinch. No, that wasn't an apology. That was damage control. Lawson opened his mouth, but she wasn't finished. A real apology isn't about protecting yourself. It's about owning what you did and recognizing the person you hurt. My daughter stood here, proud of her truth, and you tried to shatter it. If you're truly sorry, don't tell me. Look her in the eye and tell her. The air thickened again. Lawson shifted, uncomfortable under the gaze of so many. Finally, he looked at Lena, really looked. "Sorry, kid," he muttered. Monica raised an eyebrow. "Try again." This time, the crowd echoed their agreement, a few voices even saying it aloud. Lawson's face flushed crimson. The weight of the moment bore down. His shoulders sagged under the pressure of expectation. He cleared his throat. "Lena, I'm sorry," he said louder now. "I shouldn't have laughed at you, or doubted what you said. You told the truth, and I didn't listen. That was wrong." Lena stood firm, her eyes locked with his. She didn't flinch. Then, slowly, she turned to her mother. Monica gave the smallest nod, a quiet confirmation that it was enough. Lawson let out a breath. as if hoping the moment would finally pass. But Monica wasn't done. She turned back to the crowd, her voice clear and steady. This isn't just about one officer and one child. It's about how often we dismiss someone just because their story doesn't fit into our expectations. My daughter's truth was simple, but instead of listening, it was easier for him to doubt her. She scanned the faces now watching, listening. How often does that happen? How many kids grow up thinking their voices don't matter because someone in authority chose to laugh instead of listen? The ripple moved through the group. Heads nodded. Some people shifted, visibly uncomfortable, not because she was wrong, but because they knew they'd seen this play out before and stayed silent. Sophia leaned over and whispered, "She's amazing." Monica turned back to Lena. "You never have to be ashamed of speaking your truth. Not about me. Not about anything. And if someone can't handle it, that's on them, not you." Tears welled in Lena's eyes. But this time, they weren't born of humiliation. They were made of relief, of strength, of pride. Lawson stood there, clearly wishing the floor would open up beneath him. "I already said I was sorry," he mumbled. Monica looked at him one last time. "Then live like it. Next time a child speaks with pride, don't strip that away from them. Let them hold on to it. Because once you take that kind of confidence from a kid, it's not easily given back." The stillness that followed was complete. Then, unexpectedly, a single clap rang out from a young man near the checkout. Another joined. And another. It wasn't raucous. It wasn't forced. It was quiet. Steady. Honest. Lawson gave a stiff nod and stepped back, retreating through the crowd. No longer the one being watched with admiration, but the man who had been corrected in public, and deservedly so. Lena turned to her mother, her voice small but certain. "Thank you." Monica crouched down slightly until her eyes were level with her daughter's. "No, Lena. Thank you for standing up and telling the truth when it would have been easier to stay quiet. That's braver than anything I've ever done in uniform." The words settled deep in Lena's chest, soft but solid, like armor wrapping around her heart. And for the first time that day, she believed it. As the crowd slowly began to disperse, Lena felt a shift inside her. The moment hadn't just been a lesson for Officer Lawson. It was for everyone who'd watched, and for her, too. The store grew quieter, but the air still hummed with what had just taken place. A few shoppers lingered nearby, pretending to browse, though their eyes kept drifting back toward Monica and her daughter. The hushed whispers now carried a different tone, less judgment, more respect. Lena stood straighter next to her mom, her hands still locked with Sophia's. The sting of shame that had burned in her cheeks only minutes earlier had faded, replaced by something steadier. She no longer felt small. She felt seen. Monica glanced down. "You okay?" Lena nodded. "Yeah. I hate that it even happened." Monica rested her hand on her daughter's shoulder. "I know, but sometimes the hardest moments teach us the most. You don't forget them, and neither does anyone who watched." Sophia looked up, her expression still wide with awe. "You were amazing. Everyone was listening to you." Monica gave a small, knowing smile. "I wasn't just talking to him. I was talking to all of you. Never let anyone tell you your truth doesn't matter." A man in a worn baseball cap, who'd muttered something earlier, finally spoke up, this time louder. "Ma'am, thank you. I've got a daughter. She's 9. I hope she grows up with that kind of courage." Monica gave a single, respectful nod. "Courage doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you speak anyway." Lena felt something rise in her chest. Hearing those words said in front of strangers carved a permanent mark in the air. Her mother wasn't just proud of her, she wanted the world to know it. As the remaining shoppers began to move on, one woman lingered near them, a soft expression on her face. She lowered her voice, but spoke clearly enough for Lena to hear. "Thank you for your service. And thank you for showing him he was wrong." Monica's voice softened in response. "We all serve in different ways. Today, my daughter served by standing tall. That's worth honoring." The woman smiled and walked off, leaving the two of them standing beside a wall of sneakers that, moments ago, had felt like the center of the world, but now felt insignificant. Lena turned. Did I make it worse by saying anything? Monica gently shook her head. No, you made it better. You didn't hide who I am. You told the truth, even when it wasn't easy. That takes more strength than most adults ever find. And just like that, the heavy weight began to lift from Lena's shoulders. Her breath came easier. Sophia squeezed her hand. Told you he was wrong. Lena let out a quiet laugh, wiping her eyes. Yeah, you really did. Together, they began walking toward the exit. Monica's boots echoed softly against the tile, each step steady, certain. People still glanced their way, but now the looks carried something different. Not ridicule, not curiosity, admiration. As they stepped into the open mall, Lena's thoughts returned to the moment Lawson had laughed, to the disbelief in the crowd, the weight of doubt. But more than that, she heard her mother's voice again, clear, certain, cutting through it all. And even though the moment had been one of the hardest of her life, Lena realized something else. It had also been one of the most important. Monica slowed her stride and leaned in again. Lena, hear me when I say this. People will doubt you. They'll laugh, dismiss you, try to shrink your voice. But you never let them take your truth. Not for me. Not for anyone. Promise me that. Lena met her eyes, hers shining with tears she no longer feared. I promise. Monica kissed the top of her daughter's head. No speech could have carried more power than that simple act. By the time they reached the car, Lena felt lighter. She still remembered Lawson's smirk, but now it served as a reminder. How fast someone's assumptions can crumble when faced with truth. As the car doors shut and the mall disappeared behind them, Lena leaned back in her seat, her hand still holding Sophia's. I'll never be embarrassed about Mom again, she thought. Because in that store, under two bright lights and too many watching eyes, she'd learned a lesson she would carry for the rest of her life. Never let anyone laugh you out of your truth. And maybe, just maybe, the people who witnessed it had learned something too. That respect costs nothing, but withholding it, that can leave marks you don't see. Monica started the car, checked the rearview mirror, and asked softly, You girls ready to head home? Lena smiled, fully, freely, for the first time all day. Yeah, let's go home. The mall faded behind them, but the moment didn't. And for those who were there, whether they admitted it out loud or not, it would echo long after the last of Monica's footsteps had faded from that tile floor. Because life doesn't just test us in battlefields far away, it tests us right here. In stores, in schools, in moments that ask us, will we speak up or stay silent? Let this story be a reminder. Speak. Defend the truth. Even when it's hard. Even when they laugh. Because truth doesn't need permission. It just needs someone brave enough to say it out loud. Thank you for watching. Subscribe me and hit the notification bell to not miss new stories. Bye.